If I personally have a private piece of land and I hire a bunch of people and they're like, hey, there's no restaurants anywhere. What do we eat? And I go, all right, I guess I'll have the crew come and open up a restaurant, but you got to pay for the food. Is that communism?
Again, monopoly capitalism isn't really.
But hold on, this is not an issue of there's no competition. Like, it's an issue.
There is no.
No. I mean, it's an issue of there's no competition, not forcing people to do anything. So is the alternative? I just go, you know what, guys, I'm going to open a restaurant where only I get to eat. You're actually not allowed to eat it because I don't want to be a communist.
Right.
No, it's not communism because capitalism is private property plus voluntary exchange. There's no obstruction of either of these things when a property owner offers business. Dyer's criticism is that when one entity controls essential resources, the situation can become coercive. It's true that currently there is only one restaurant, and it could be coercive, but that doesn't stop other businesses from being built. There aren't many businesses in the area because the workers are in a remote location with little foot traffic. It's essentially civilization in its infancy. Tim is right. It's capitalism. So Dyer's criticism isn't that strong. There aren't many competitors. Sure, that means the business isn't maximally efficient since it doesn't face competition yet. But that can change as the area develops. The real problem is that Dyer frames this as a systemic criticism, but the system hasn't even begun yet. What he's really criticizing is the absence of development, and you could apply that exact same criticism to any system, including his own. Every system in its infancy looks weak and inefficient because nothing has been created yet. The issue isn't capitalism, it's that civilization hasn't been developed.
Right, but this is the same argument as to why people would own like an entire water supply, right? So if you privatize water, then no one has a right to the water.
But I'm not talking about that. I'm saying there's
a company town could own the water.
Indeed, what right do you have to take it? That's communist.
It's not communist to have public municipalities.
Wait, what?
Once again, this is largely a semantic dispute, one that Tim is right about and Dyer is wrong about. At least in terms of economics. Capitalism refers to the ownership of private property and voluntary exchange. If a home or business captures or homesteads a resource, whether it be a plot of land, an apple orchard, or a small body of water, they now privately own that resource under capitalist theory. Capitalism in the academic sense has fairly strict boundaries because there are many other economic systems that operate differently. What it sounds like Dyer is referencing instead is the mixed market system most countries operate under today. Most liberal republics and democracies implement a combination of things: private property, some communal or public resources, and a lot of welfare programs. Dyer could have his own personal definition of capitalism as a system that mixes markets and property rights, but that's a colloquial use of the term, and it's far less precise than the standard definition.
Doesn't capitalism require competition?
And who's stopping people from opening a restaurant across the street?
Well, you would if you have a company.
No. If I own property and
you said monopoly capitalism, you would be then stopping the competition in a monopoly capitalist situation.
No. We're talking about a company town, right? Mm-hmm. Privately owned property.
Right.
So do they have to relinquish their water rights?
If it grows to a certain size where you begin to have competition,
that's literally communism.
No, it's not.
Seizing the assets from the private landowners.
No, I'm
literally going to a guy who owned land and says, "There's too many people here now, so your water is ours." That's communism.
Sounds like communism to me, Jay.
If you grow to where you have a society that requires competition,
then the people can seize your assets. Agreed. We're communists.
Bro, he's coping so hard.
There's no difference.
You want from my system without input, and that is the component of the left that I disagree with.
No, your argument is a leftist argument, actually.
That people should have to work.
Classical liberalism is a leftist position. You argue classical liberalism. That's a classic leftist position.
I'm arguing for merit-based capitalism is leftist.
Yes. Classical liberalism out of the Enlightenment.
That is incorrect.
No, out of the Enlightenment, classical liberalism is leftist.
This has always made me laugh with Dyer. It's just the things he says, man. He attacks people through name-calling, definitional semantics, and very specific historical framing. basically trying to win rhetorically by labeling his opponent with something the audience dislikes. In this case, he calls Tim's argument a leftist position. But notice something. Dyer never actually deconstructs or challenges Tim's argument. He doesn't explain why Tim's reasoning about property or markets is wrong. He simply labels the position leftist and moves on. Even if Dyer were historically correct, it still wouldn't matter, because that doesn't refute the argument. He's judging the idea based on where it came from, not whether it's true. And that's fallacious.
So when it comes to the idea of private land ownership, the argument is fully understanding population expansion can come to a point where some people will never own land. But the idea is I need to be secure in my possessions to know and prepare for harsh winters, for instability, so that I can survive, so that I can be fruitful, and that I can multiply.
So you appeal to Genesis and God. What God? What principles of Genesis tell you that?
What are you talking about? I'm not a Christian.
Then how are you going to base this argument for rights in God?
What do you mean?
What God?
My God. My moral worldview.
So it's not a universal principle, it's just subjective?
Oh my God. Tim doesn't even know what he's getting himself into. Dyer is about to drag his ass into presuppositionalism. Poor man. Seriously, imagine trying to debate politics and economics and suddenly getting pulled into a metaphysical debate about the foundation of morality. But to be fair, Dyer's within his rights to challenge Tim's prescriptive foundation. From the sound of it, Tim doesn't seem able to clearly distinguish the foundation of his moral reasoning. Is he arguing from consequences, like human survival, prosperity, and stability? Or is he appealing to some kind of intrinsic moral value? Put more simply, is Tim a consequentialist or a deontologist? I don't even think he knows.
Than the Christian moral structures. We just don't know them yet. I would say historically, based upon what we have seen throughout the world and what we think we know, the Christian moral worldview has been dramatically superior to other moral structures. That being said, I'm not a Christian, and I don't believe in the faith structures they have. However, I have recognized that the moral structures of a Christian society tend to make life more successful for individuals, which is ultimately beneficial to the standard function of life, which is organizing organizing free energy into complex systems.
So just utilitarianism, so because it works well. That was utilitarian.
You're wrong.
That's utilitarianism.
No.
You argue that it works well.
Jay, if you don't have an argument for what I said, stop trying to blanket it with something else as a straw man.
The argument was utilitarianism.
It's literally not. I did. We can talk about.
Why is it not utilitarian?
Well, we can talk about deontological ethos. We can talk about.
That has nothing to do with this.
No, indeed. My point is,
enlightenment.
Instead of arguing what I said, you're arguing thing. I'm like, well, I gave you a specific outline.
Well, I'm giving you the problem with utilitarianism. I'm sorry that you're not aware of the problems with that position.
I'm sorry that you can't actually address what I told you.
First of all, Tim is a utilitarian, at least based on what he actually said. He's defending Christian civilization because of the benefits it produces for society and human life. That's an outcome-based argument. At the same time, I understand why Tim is getting frustrated. Dyer keeps doing the same rhetorical move. Instead of engaging Tim's argument, he just labels it. First, Tim's a leftist. Now, he's a utilitarian. These labels are debate buzzwords. Leftist, communist, utilitarian. Words like that rhetorically damage an opponent in front of an audience. But the problem is that simply calling someone a name isn't an argument. It doesn't actually address Tim's reasoning. That's why Tim's irritated. Dyer isn't engaging with the argument.
So in the end, I ultimately conclude, if we want people to have families and have kids, private land ownership is probably the best thing we can do.
That's a good story, but it doesn't get to grounding or justification for why the right is actually something that is grounded in God.
I can't do this.